Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast, coming to you from behind one of these three magical, colorful portals. Quickly, Martin, choose what portal. Do you choose the magenta portal, the amethyst portal, or the shining white portal?
Magenta.
Magenta. Oh, Martin, I'm sorry, you're in the plane of pandemonium. You're going to lose your mind for all eternity. Oh, so.
Let's go! Were all the doors to the plane of pandemonium?
No, the amethyst one was to the abyss, and the shining white one was to the positive energy plane, which, if you read up on the wiki about it, is so overwhelming with positive energy that you can survive no more than a few minutes there before your body just evaporates into the plane and becomes one with it, and you cease to exist. Which I'm not sure is a good or bad thing, but none of them were good options. So the game was rigged from the start. Sorry, buddy.
It's good. It's like going into the live stream in Final Fantasy 7. Or Joe, did you ever see that thing? Have you seen it? Where it's like there's three doors and it's like
very quickly. I'm your host Conor O'Brien, and joining me as always is my co-host Mr. Martin O'Dwyer. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, Conor. How's it going, folks? Happy to be here.
Now, sorry, you were talking about 3 doors in it.
Yes.
Or 2 doors.
No, there's 3. I think isn't there like 3 doors in it, and it's like not scary, scary, very scary.
Yeah. And then like one of them just has a girl severed in half hanging up on the coat rack thing.
I think that was not scary.
That was not scary. It was a great movie.
Yeah.
So well. It's always a bit of a gamble whenever you try to do something that's like a remake of something else. But they pulled it off massively. I haven't seen the second half, the part 2 yet. I've heard it's not as good, but I've heard it's okay.
It's still a good movie, but yeah, it doesn't match the quality of the first. I think they just really got lightning in a bottle with like Bill Skarsgård's performance in that one, and the kids as well. Like all the kids in that film.
Every single kid actor in that movie knocks it out of the park. Like
kids are
on a
normally
level I can't believe it. Sorry?
Kids are normally terrible as well.
Well, I mean, like that's why whenever you see an interview with an actor who's after working with a child for any sort of production, they always have that pleasantly surprised thing
Pleasantly
where pleasantly surprised thing where they're like. Where they'll be like, "Oh, kids are normally terrible, but I couldn't believe how professional this young person was, and and how polite and good they were at their job, and how they took it seriously and everything." So I think people expect kids to be kids, but
is it wrong? I'd kind of love an actor just to crack up one day and be like, "Do you see this little hair?" Like to drag him around the set for 3 months, feeding hhim lines.
There's how many kids is there in? Is it 7
in the
kids
Losers
in the
Club?
movie?
Well, there's a load of kids because like they even like there's the bully kid as well and stuff. But like in terms of like, or do you mean like the main?
I mean the
cast,
Losers,
like,
the Losers
the
Club.
Losers
Yeah,
Club is like, there's like 1, 2, because there's Finn Wolfhard's character. There's Bill, the leader, whose brother Georgie dies. Then there is I can't remember her name, but she's played by Jessica Chastain when she's older. Beverly. Then there's like the heavier kid whose name, like I think his name is Ben, maybe.
Ben, yes, who grows up to be I know he gets really successful when he's older.
He's a writer. He's the Stephen King insert character.
Is Bill not that? Is that not Bill?
Oh, sorry, I think it might be actually. Yeah, isn't it?
I think Ben's like an architect or something like that, and he gets really fit as well. He gets really like in good shape when he comes back as an adult. Yeah.
Yeah,
but basically, there's like 5 to 7 kids there.
I think there might be 6. No, there's 7.
6 kids.
I think, yeah.
We'll say 7. We'll just say 7. But imagine having 7 kids, and like every time, again, thinking along the mindset of every time you do a production with children, you're taking a little bit of a gamble on whether or not they will be like professional or whatever. And then imagine absolutely knocking it out of the park with every single kid in the movie, like just being so professional, so good to work with, such good actors, bouncing off each other really, really well, phenomenally.
Yeah.
It's like you said, lightning in a bottle. Martin, we're going to get into our topic in just a moment. There is something I want to just very briefly mention to you today, which I think will make you very happy. Last night, along with Tara, we finished all 9 episodes of Arcane.
Yes.
I cannot believe how good that show was.
Yes.
That was one of the best things I've watched in a long time. And I mean, like, the thing I couldn't get over initially was how good the animation was. Those are like video game cutscene level animations, but for like 40 times 9, however many hours worth of content that is. That's insane. Well, actually it's like 6 hours.
Yeah,
it's like 3 hours worth of content, and everything is animated like a high-end video game.
Studio
which again
beasts.
That's like not at all cheap.
No.
Like there's some shows that come out in animated shows and like they do what looks good but isn't necessarily they're not blowing the budget on it. They're doing what it looks good and what's functional. And like it's like someone just handed them a blank check for animation on this show and goes, do what you need to do to get this thing made.
It
And
took
the
6 years
animation is outstanding.
to make the first season. It took 6
6
years.
years.
Yeah. The second season is already in production, but I'd imagine it'll probably be a lot quicker because I'd imagine to do this, they probably had to like do a lot of things where like getting approval on character designs and like building their own software tools to like make it happen. And now
They probably have a lot of assets and stuff like that that they've already created that they can reuse and stuff like that, like character models and stuff like that. Man, it was.
What did you think of the hex tech? That's what I thought you'd like the most was the way hex tech works.
From the very first episode, the only thing I wanted out of the show was just to watch Violet punching people.
Yeah. Oh, Violet's such a beast. Oh, I love it.
That initial scrap in the first episode in the alleyway is so well done. It's just a bunch of teenagers pucking each other, but like they slow down all the animations and you see them hit their jaws and blood goes spurting out of their nose and stuff like that. You see
someone get hit and the flesh on their face move first, then their skull. Like that, it's that level of realism.
Yeah. It's honestly it was so good. When I won't spoil anything, but like she was great.
That's Haley Steinfeld's doing her voice as well.
Oh, I know, yeah. I was looking up I recognize very few of them. One of the guys, Marcus, is played by the tall dude who was on the tour with them in Spider-Man: Far From Home. You know the other guy who was interested in Mary Jane?
Oh, really? Oh.
He plays Marcus. Yeah. There's a few people I kind of half recognize from other roles. But honestly, like I couldn't. All the voice acting was top notch. The animation was stellar. The setting is really good. I'm not going to play a League because I don't like the gameplay of it, but I will absolutely read up on loads of the wikis and watch the animated shorts and loads of stuff. Cause I'm interested now. The world seems super interesting to me.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that is literally one city on a giant.
Yeah,
continent.
Exactly. Yeah, I looked up the map as well, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of down here. Okay, it's just this little tiny thing.
There's a universe page you can go on that has an interactive map, and you can click around on all the places, and it'll give you. You can click on like Piltover and Zon, and it'll be like a general thing, and then you can click into like specific areas, and like it literally goes down into like subsections of lore within lore. Yeah. It's such a fun thing to just spend like an hour just clicking around, learning about like why this society that lives on a giant mountain builds all their monuments in like circular patterns, to emulate the sun and the stars and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Really cool. And season 2 of Arcane is going to be hype, and apparently. Yeah. Because that was so successful, I think they're looking into doing more shows as well, or there will be more coming, or maybe they'll just continue Arcane on past Piltover and Zon and into other places, because the timeline that Arcane kind of finishes up around, is right.
It's obviously like prior to the game, I suppose.
So the game itself isn't really. Like the gameplay and the story don't really interact a whole bunch, because like it used to be a whole thing where it was called League of Legends because all the champions came from all these different places to fight on the fields of justice and become a champion in the League of Legends to win money, fame, or power for wherever they are, or for whatever their goals were. But then they kind of rewrote their lore around 2014 and basically scrapped that whole idea. So now like the kind of actual Summoner's Rift play 5v5 team game, the lore doesn't really come into that. It's just it's more so the lore is just there for character depth and lore and cool stuff like that, and awesome TV shows to be made from it.
It's a bit like I suppose a lot of games follow that format now, where it's a bit like either Overwatch or Apex as well, where there's characters in Overwatch and they have backstories and stuff, but the game to game play and stuff doesn't actually factor into the story, because when you obviously
other than like voice lines
exactly, because you can have like Reaper working alongside Soldier 76, even though they're technically enemies now in the lore, they can be on the same team working together and stuff like that. Or you can have someone like I don't know, Soldier 76 and Anna, who are good friends because they're old Overwatch buddies, but they could be on the opposite team shooting and killing each other, but it doesn't actually mean anything for the overarching story. It's just like, here we're kind of just pulling these characters out of the lore and dropping them into an arena for you to have fun with, but it doesn't have to have any real stakes. And Apex is the same thing, because Apex is meant to be a to the death survival arena with all these different characters, but obviously you can play multiple matches as different people, and there's some people like you can play. I forget your man's name. He's the evil robot guy in it, but himself and Loba hate each other because he killed Loba's parents. But you can just have them on the same team, even though her goal in life is to find and kill this guy. Again,
Yeah.
it's kind of just inconsequential fun, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's just not related. It's not related to lore. It's just there for like coolness, and like in League, you'll get like certain characters will have like special voice lines. Like if you hit your taunt, if you like go control forwards the taunt button, you can your character will do a taunt normally. But like if say like if you're playing Vi and there's a Jinx nearby and you hit taunt, she'll have a special voice line for like
Cool.
if there'll be special ones for like your first encounter of that champion, when you kill them, when you get killed by them, or if you press taunt near them.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that kind of
It's
stuff.
good.
Yeah.
There's stuff like that in Overwatch as well. I've always liked where like you're in the spawn room before the match starts, and certain characters will just say little things to each other, and myself and Tara are always listening out for them because they do update them regularly, and you get little snippets of information about who they are, how they know each other, and stuff like that. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
Martin, today I want to talk with you about a pretty broad topic. So we probably will not get all of it covered because
Okay.
frankly, there's just too much here. But I would like to talk to you about the cosmology of the planes in D&D.
We're dealing with the big words today.
The big words, yeah, the big 3-syllable words. Cosmology has 4 syllables. I apologize. I literally counted on my fingers here, and I'm like, no, that's wrong. Yeah, so cosmology of the planes. Basically, a lot of people, I think, who maybe have a surface level understanding of D&D will be like, oh, it's like medieval fantasy. You fight dragons and go into dungeons, and you start off in a village or a town, and blah blah blah. And there's armies and kingdoms, and they're not wrong. But there is a much greater, and I do not use the term greater lightly in this scenario. There is a much greater depth to Dungeons and Dragons in that you can travel to various other worlds and planes of existence that stretch out. There's a bunch when I was researching this I came across I didn't know existed. Like, yeah, and I'm looking at them from past editions and stuff like that, and I'm like, wow, this just goes on and on and on. And the way these things are normally represented is with this thing called the Great Wheel of Cosmology. And this is more specifically, or not specifically, but kind of more commonly Faerun, which is where the most D&D games or pre-written adventures in 5e take place. But I think that some of that carries over to Greyhawk, and some of that carries over to Dragonlance. There's a few different ones, and they kind of pick and choose a few little bits, or add stuff in, or take stuff out to kind of coincide with their setting. But the way the Great Wheel works is that you have at the very center the material plane, which is the real world, where elves and humans and dwarves and all that kind of stuff live. And we're going to probably talk about the 2 closest planes to that first. And those are probably the ones you and I maybe are most familiar with, which is the Feywild and the Shadowfell.
Yes.
So these are 2 planes that mirror the prime material plane. The Feywild, of course, is a realm of fairies and archfey and stuff like that. Everything is basically dialed up to 11 in terms of its colorfulness and its prettiness and all that kind of stuff. But also, it's very, very deadly, like a tree frog. It's really colorful and pretty, but it will kill you instantly. And then, of course, the opposing one to that is the Shadowfell, which is basically stripped of all emotion and color, and it's bland and desolate and just full of these ravenous evil creatures.
In my head, that's always like what it looks like when Frodo puts the ring on.
The Shadowfell?
Yeah. This kind of like washed out, kind of like windswept, ethereal kind of. Actually, no, I suppose probably the ring is more like the ethereal plane.
I think it's the ethereal, because we'll get onto the ethereal a bit, but for me, the thing I always think about is just that is mostly since I started watching Stranger Things is the Upside Down. The Upside Down is basically, you can see if you watch the show when they go to the Upside Down, which is this other parallel dimension. There is still a school there. There is still their house, but it's all covered over in these little like roots and vines, and things are crumbling and desolate and kind of rotting, and the air is foul. And that to me is always what the Shadowfell is. It's this darker reflection of our world. I think if you read up in the DMG, it tells you like if you look at a castle in the material plane, a big castle on a hill, and then you immediately for or transport to the Shadowfell, something akin to that same castle will be there, but it'll be this rundown, desolate version of that castle that's kind of crumbling away and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
I actually have the exact bit you're talking about here if you want to hear it.
Yeah, hit me. Yeah.
So the Shadowfell overlaps the material plane in much the same way as the Feywild. Aside from the colourless landscape, it appears similar to the material plane. Landscapes from the landmarks landmarks from the material plane are recognisable on the Shadowfell, but they are twisted and warped, distorted reflections of what exists on the material. Where a mountain stands on the material plane, the corresponding feature on the Shadowfell is a jagged rock outcropping with a resemblance to a skull.
So yeah, it's like everything's kind of an evil, dark, gritty, awful version of what it is in the real world. I've had incredible fun with the Shadowfell before. We've talked about it multiple times. Obviously, it comes up. It's great. But we talked about it, of course, when we did the Ravenloft video, because all of those what they call domains of dread in Ravenloft in the book are sub planes or sub. I don't know what you call them, territories of the Shadowfell. So Barovia, where
Stradvon
Zarovich lives, is one of those planes. It's creepy. It's full of wolves and ravens and bats, and the forests are haunted, and there's witches everywhere, and it's really a kind of gothic thing. But it draws on that idea that nothing's vibrant, nothing's colorful, everything is desolate and run down and creepy. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had great fun. We had a very early in our current campaign, we had a Shadowfell arc where you guys traveled through the town of Rune, named for the standing rune stone, which basically wards away evil creatures. So demons and monstrosities and stuff like that will be less inclined to come near the town. It just feel repelled by it. But this thing recharges on a full moon, and there was an eclipse that month, which only happens every 100 or so years. And as a result, then the town was unprotected until the next full month passed and the lunar cycle came around again to recharge it. And in that time, what you guys found out is that the town was built on top of a rift in the plains, because although these planes are separate from one another, sometimes they just overlap a little bit and portals can just appear randomly in the world. And in a cave beneath the town, there was a portal that led directly to the Shadowfell, and because it was no longer being suppressed by the runestone, you guys had to deal with a few monsters and creatures that came through it into the town.
Yeah, that was real early on. Like that was like the Skulk, wasn't
The
it?
Skulk, yeah, it's basically a traveler that gets lost on the borders between the Shadowfell, and because the Shadowfell is just so devoid of all passion and emotion and stuff like that, this person kind of loses their identity slowly over time, and they just become this malicious creature who's hateful and jealous of people on the material plane, and they kind of exist on the border where sometimes they'll sneak onto the material plane and attack people just out of sheer malice.
Yeah,
It's a very weak creature, although it's always invisible, which is tricky. But it's a very weak creature in terms of its health points and stuff like that, or hit points, I should say. But we actually got a fairly sizable arc. Like, you guys were maybe 2 or 3 levels with this thing lurking around the town, attacking every couple nights and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a great arc. It was one of my favorite arcs of this campaign because it was so simple. And I just love that. I just love the level of mileage I got out of that. Man, have you used? Because again, I don't play in your game. Have you used the Shadowfell at all in your current campaign?
Not the Shadowfell yet. No, I haven't quite gotten to using the Shadowfell. I've used a couple other ones, but I have some ideas for the Shadowfell. I just haven't decided exactly where I want to put it. Yeah, like I just like in terms of the way it functions and sort of some of the cool creatures you can pull on there and other stuff. I have ideas for it like late game, like maybe like level 15, 16, 17. I've ideas for maybe messing around with the Shadowfell around then. Really, actually, it kind of depends on what way my party go. Because to be honest, the last few times they've decided where they're going next after the big arc, they just aside from like the last 2, I think. Yeah, this one and the previous one were both, no, we're going here. But like the last few times where they had a chance to decide where to go, they literally rolled the dice. Like they're just like
Oh, okay.
there's like 8 continents, and they just literally went, all right, we'll roll a d8. One and like, because what I usually do is I'll give them like a summary of all the plot points that are currently going on as of the best of their knowledge.
Yeah.
So what I tell them could be 3, 4, 5 months out of date, depending on how long it's been since they decided to go in and look into what's going on there. And obviously that will progress. So what I do is, I'll give them like, on this continent, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, and this is happening. And then they literally went like, 3, right, we're doing that. Which is fun.
If ever there's a game where deciding where you should go next is based on the roll of a dice, I think D&D is the one for it.
No, I like it. It's worked out really cool because some things they might not have gotten for. Although to be honest, I knew as soon as I put the words Dragonborn Pirate Warlord in my game that Mike would be like, "We're going here. I don't care. We're going here."
Yeah, you mentioned before he basically ignored what was very much a plotline designed for him and his character and his homeland, he was like, "Oh, there's that, but also Dragonborn Pirate Warlord."
I literally gave him a vision of a black wave sweeping across his homeland, and his mentor like grabbing him from behind, spinning him around, and looking at him with eyes bleeding black. And being like, your home's in danger, dude. And he was like, oh god. And then like they finish that arc, he comes to the next one, and they're like, right, where are you going? Fully expecting to go, because the thing I told him about there is, yeah, bad things are happening at your home. And he went, pirates though. Pirates, you said. Pirates? Yes, pirates. Oh,
I wonder what would happen in my campaign if I turned to Mike and I just said, "Hey, your island's about to sink into the ocean." He'd probably be like, "Yeah, but I gotta kill the Empire, though."
Oh man, yeah. Also, yeah, I can't there's a lot of really cool stuff in there, and like, was it Taran Paula in
Critical Role? Yeah.
Yeah, like I love that idea, and there was there was a D&D live stream that was like, I think it was the Josh Machiner live stream, and it was like Travis, Joe Manganiello. It was like Joe Manganiello's personal trainer, and the Big Show from the Big Show, formerly of WWE.
Yeah.
And they all played like tanks and barbarians and paladins of various kinds, and just basically survived an onslaught at the base of the tower. That their whole thing was just survive. And some of the stuff they put in there was really cool, and like particularly with some of the newer stuff that's coming in as well, the likes of like your deep dragons and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's like could do like a really like almost like an almost upside down ish kind of play on the dark. Oh god, I'm getting my own campaign names mixed up now, but the Shadowfell. Yeah, I know. I think there's a decent amount of stuff there that I like really want to get into, but sadly can't not go into massive detail because it hasn't happened yet.
No, of course. Well, look, there's, like I said, we have plenty to talk about. I think the Shadowfell for me, because it gets used a lot, is because it is literally bordering, as per the Great Wheel, it does border the Prime Material plane. And I think with things like Stranger Things and stuff like that, it makes it very easy to imagine a shadowy realm that borders our own, And I often, in Stranger Things, like it was always very ambiguous how these portals, they just kind of bleed through or kind of open up in the weirdest of spots. And I always think about the Shadowfell as just like, if there's a portal to the Shadowfell nearby, the area will look like unnaturally dark. Even light, like sources of light, like lanterns and candles, will kind of be smothered a little bit. And if you find an area of particular darkness, like a dark corner or a room with no lights on, you might take a step, even though with the light on, this room is like solid oak floors. You might turn out the light, take a step, and trip, and you'll just land on dirt. And when you turn the light back on, you'll be like, "Oh, I'm in like a cave in the Shadowfell." You'll just slip through by accident, like falling through like a subway grate or something like that, just down into a different realm. And I think it makes
case being death.
Yeah, well, sorry, I said subway grate. I'm like, you follow subway grate, it won't be long before you see two lights coming right at you,
Followed by one very big light at the end of a long tunnel.
Yeah, exactly. The opposing one to the Shadowfell then is I basically actually. I wanted to say as well, for my own homebrew, well, you know this, I have the Shadowfell as a moon that that orbits my prime material plane. And even it works in the opposite. It's always like the opposite side of the prime material plane to the Feywild. The Feywild is my primary moon, my actual moon. But it's kind of got a pinky hue to it, and it's in the night sky. But then there's this dark, kind of lightless recess in the day, where if you look up into the sky, it'll just be a kind of a dark hole in the sky, and that is the Shadowfell moon. That's visible at all times. It's just like it still looks far away. It's still just a little dot, but it's just this hollow dot in the sky that kind of absorbs the light around it. Um, and I just that was in terms of like designing cosmologies, I based mine around like planets, so like it's a solar system, which isn't like terribly unique. It follows the idea of the wheel and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much. It's fairly standard. I will get on in a minute to one particular cosmology I absolutely love because it's just really, really cool.
Okay.
But I do want to talk about the Feywild for a little bit. Have you used the Feywild at all in your setting?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. I actually have a lot planned for the Feywild.
Okay.
Particularly because when starting out, I had a Circle of the Moon druid in my party, who had this whole thing where she called herself the Forgotten, and she had this whole thing where she thinks she was like either cast out or couldn't remember where she was from and all this stuff. So I can actually go into a little more detail on this than I can on my plans for the Shadowfell, because the Shadowfell ones really haven't solidified, but like these ones have, and the guys have kind of heard bits and pieces about places. But basically, on my I have a continent called Alf, which hilariously, obviously, is the home continent of the elves.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, that too.
Yeah, that too. And also the puppet who's back in Pog form.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the home continent of the elves, and I want to say like a good third of the western edge of that continent is taken up by a massive forest called Cuilchivor, and inside that forest is there's a territory that nobody enters, called the Parliament of Druids, and that's a place where it's just this huge chunk of the forest that nobody but the beasts are allowed to enter under pain of death from the Druids, and they're there to protect. Rumors have it they're there to protect the portal to the Feywild.
That sounds really, really cool. I love the. Can I just say, chef's kiss on the Parliament of Druids. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I have a lot of stuff planned and it's really fun. And I really want to go into once because I imagine they eventually will kind of get into that. But once they do, I really actually know. I can't say anything. I almost let a thing slip that I've had planned since like level 3. But yeah, no, with the Fae stuff, I'm really looking forward to getting into it and going more into what it's called the She in Irish mythology, which literally means like magic, and basically there's like marching armies in that like there's just armies and armies of like fairies that march up and down like these endless roads going away. Like time is so strange, and like you walk forward and the sun shifts to the moon and back, and like all this really, really just very trippy kind of almost like not Lewis Carroll, but almost like this like Alice in Wonderland kind of through the looking glass. Everything's a bit strange and nonsensical, and like words have specific words and rhymes and deals have specific power and stuff like that. And I really I'm looking forward to doing it just so I can go full out. It's actually I've read a lot of that already, but I'm kind of getting into ideas for like demon stuff for my next campaign, and I tweeted it from the Micflayers podcast Twitter account during the week. It was like just DM things, and it was like your order of the complete works of Aleister Crowley and the Dictionarium Well, hang on, I'll pull. I think it's like the Dictionarium Infernum.
It's like a demon collection thing or anthology or something like that.
I looked into it. It was written between 1818 and 1837 or something like that. Hang on, I'm just pulling. The Infernal Dictionary, Gods, Devils, and Spirits of the Dictionaire Infernal is what it's called. And hang on, let's see. Can you see that?
It looks like something riding something else. like some sort of dragon dog. But maybe that's just me. It looks like the cover of a metal album.
It is. It's very, very metal. It's a three-headed demon. One's got the head of a bull. The other has the head of a ram. The other one, his head's on fire. He's got like a pointy, fiery lance and bat wings. And there's some kind of giant demon, I'm guessing, under it. But yeah, I've been listening. I'm doing some research, and I want to do some demonic stuff for my next campaign. And yeah, doing research that makes you look like a serial killer. Just the M things. Sorry.
The only thing that could have made that worse if you'd ordered that on Amazon as well as like some sort of like decorative ceremonial knife.
I'm not even joking. When I clicked into my Amazon there to find the title, they're now recommending me statues of Baphomet, so that's great.
Gotta love that learning algorithm.
It's cool. It's cool. No, I like the occult and tarot and all that stuff. Anyway. But yeah, with the Fae, I really want to get. I'm really excited to get into eventually. We haven't. I have some links to certain characters in the Fae, that they may or may not be aware of currently. But yeah, I'm very, very excited to get it on, just because there's so much that we can draw from between like Irish and like Scottish and like just general Celtic lore all around.
Yeah, if you look at like Celtic mythology in particular, a lot of the stuff that is Fae related comes from that, whether it be even some Norman stuff, but that kind of came picked up from residual Celtic culture from Britain.
I'm pretty sure boggarts are Cornish.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's literally everywhere and anywhere from that's kind of Celtic. There's a bunch of influence, and I think a lot of that comes from stuff like Edmund Spenser and the Fairy Queen and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a great wealth of stuff there. We've touched on it a handful of times in our current campaign. I always like it, but I always maybe obsess over it a little bit because there's a particular vibe I try to strike when it comes to the Fae, where things are weird, but I don't like them to be so weird that you kind of just feel like you're along for the ride. I feel like in the previous campaign, you guys had spent some time in the Feywild, and I would tell you like you would like walk behind a tree or push a branch aside, and all of a sudden you emerge in an entirely different part of the forest or something like that. And I think stuff like that has its place, but if you overuse it, it kind of feels like you're just shoving the person through a door every now and again to get them to the next plot point. So I tried to tone it down a little bit with the current. And this time when you went to the Feywild, there was some weird stuff. Like I'd at one point you had to cross a desert of black sand and black glass to find a volcano, crystal volcano.
Flying whales.
And there was flying furry whales that would like flap their fins like wings, being ridden by like 6 or 8 red caps who just had like hooks and stuff, and they're all wrapped up in red, and they jumped off like a raiding party off of this flying whale creature.
I love red caps as well. I absolutely love. They're just these tiny psychotic balls of hate with giant metal boots that they drop kick people with. Oh my god, I love them.
Some people have steel toe cap boots. These guys just have steel boots.
I know. My sorcerer took both of them to the chaps when they hot them.
The Feywild, honestly, it's one of my favorite places to do. And like again, you can kind of I think like just out of like old mythology of like fairies living in the forest and fairy forts and stuff like that. I think it makes perfect sense if you don't want to have your players going through a forest and be like, here's a bear or a pack of wolves or anything like that. Be like, oh, you come across some really weird fairy stuff like fairies or pixies or what else is there? Quicklings and stuff like that, or another one.
I really wanted to do like a changeling kind of horror, not horror, but like a changeling quest line that'd be like really creepy and messed up. With like fairies taking babies and stuff, and you have to follow it, because traditionally what happens is you have to follow. I think in Irish, it's kind of messed up because I think in Irish mythology the way you test for a changeling was you shove a red hot iron poker down the baby's throat.
That sounds about right.
Yeah,
Catholicism.
No, did long before Catholicism, friend.
Oh, sorry. I was just a knee-jerk habit of blaming Catholicism for everything.
To be fair, yeah, they did a lot, but no, that just very traditional. Like fairies are reversed iron.
Yeah.
Iron and salt.
Iron burns them, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the hot iron poker was the thing. But yeah, no, like I think there's a lot of potential for some really creepy stuff to do. Like, because there is a movie called The Hole in the Ground, I think, and it's a changeling story where where changelings come and steal a baby and from a family, and the mother and father have to try like go into the fairy world and get the baby back. And they do fairies is more like an insectoid, almost like fungus-like creature as well. It's really cool.
I've seen
It's on
so,
Netflix.
oh,
Yeah,
it's a
that's it.
2019 movie.
Mike
Okay.
Flayer's recommendation. Check that out if you like weird body horror fairy stuff.
Hey, it's got an 83 on Rotten Tomatoes. That ain't bad.
Oh, something happened to somebody's eyeball that made me very uncomfortable.
No thanks. Hard pass. Do you know, I'm not even that bad when it comes to like it comes to like eyeballs or like even like flesh being cut or torn or blood or anything like that. I'm not that bad. Bones get me. Cracking bones makes me cringe like nothing else, man. There's another part of Connor talking about Twilight in the podcast again. In the second to last movie, there's a bit where Bella gets pure like
Oh, I know exactly what you
weak.
mean. Yeah,
And she falls over and breaks like several bones, and the sound effect and everything,
oh
just
right.
I can't watch it.
I thought you were on about that bit where her like spine like cracks when she's giving birth.
Sort of similar, very. It's the same
'Cause
movie, and it's within
if
maybe
you
20 minutes of each other or
yeah
whatever. It's awful. It's I don't like the movies anyway, but like Tara will occasionally watch them, and if she's on that movie, I'll be like, oh, this is the part where I'll be back in like 20 minutes because I can't sit through that. It just makes me so uncomfortable.
so body horror is a weakness. Excellent. I like that term.
Yes, they write that one down. But there's a couple of kind of resources I would recommend if you're doing Feywild or Shadowfell, right? One is for Feywild specifically. Look up or get the book The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which came out recently enough.
How did we
Great
not
stuff
talk
in
about
there.
that?
Sorry,
I was gonna say, how did we not talk about the Wild Beyond the Witchlight already?
The Wild Beyond the Witchlight is really really good. There's some great stuff for fairy stuff in there. Some great Fey-based monsters. Because there's a relatively limited number of Fey creatures in the monster manual and stuff like that. So this book helps expand on that. And then the other thing I'd recommend for both planes is you play the Shivering Isles expansion to Oblivion, where they go to Mania and Dementia, which are basically the Feywild and sort of the Shadowfell, but
Oh,
not so much. But there's
the first Darksiders game as well, actually.
oh really? Yeah.
You do a lot. There's a lot of like Fey stuff and stuff in the early part.
Pretty cool. I think I have all of those on Steam just from gathering them up in various Steam sales and stuff like that. I've never played any of them.
If you like,
And the thing is, they're kind of just watching on button mashing kind of games, so you can just breeze through a bunch of enemies and stuff like that.
the first one is a lot more like a Dark Zelda,
Like a dark Zelda. Oh, interesting. Okay.
like Legend
Like
of Zelda.
puzzle stuff like that.
Yeah, Legend of Zelda, but with like an apocalypse skin, and you go
Yeah.
around with a big sword cutting things in half.
It always looked pretty cool.
And you have a horse called Ruin, who's awesome.
Ruin.
Yeah, War.
Yeah, it's
War and Ruin.
Yeah, it's War. You play in the first one,
Yeah,
then isn't
yeah.
it Death in the second one?
War. It goes War, Death, and then I think 3 is Strife.
That's the woman, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I think is it Dread or something like that? Some other guy with guns shows up, and I want to say he's played.
Death has guns.
No, but there's another. I think he's just an NPC, or he's in maybe
okay.
a mobile game or a Switch game or something like that. I can't remember. I've only seen clips and stuff from them. They always look kind of cool.
They're fun.
But again, just haven't gotten around to them. So those are your two kind of main, most closely adjacent planes to
Material.
the material. And we've covered them a handful of times in both of our ones. In order to get to the other planes, Martin, to get a little bit further out, the outer planes, or to the next level, we'll say, there is a place which exists in. Technically, I think it exists across all D&D settings, because you can use this place to travel not just between the various planes of your own setting, but technically, I think to like places like Faerun and Eberron, and also technically to like Earth, like real world Earth. And it's the city of Sigil. It's called the City of Doors, which is. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say I literally just watched a short on the Queen of the City. I don't want to get into it unless I think you're.
Oh, you're going to, because I vaguely know this, but I didn't revise it for this episode. So if you want to jump, I know some little bits, but if you want to jump in about that, yeah.
No, it was just literally. Do you know that I can't remember his channel. I feel terrible about it, but he's that really awesome American guy who does like the YouTube shorts where they're like a minute long and he breaks down lore, and he finishes every video with "See you at sunrise." See, it's Sundown.
Sounds
Sorry,
familiar.
see you at
I'm,
Sundown.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm almost certain I've seen this, but
No, he's really good. Like
yeah,
if you watch a lot of D&D stuff on YouTube, he will show up in your recommendations.
yeah, yeah.
It's like saying Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times. You just say,
Mm.
see you at Sundown. See you at Sundown. See you at Sundown. See you at Sundown. Hey. But yeah, she basically the city, and I think it's Sigil, isn't it?
Uh, okay, you're doing a Matt Mercer on it right now because I was going to pronounce it sigil because that's the word sigil, right?
Yes, but it's spelled the same as the word sigil, but it's not. It's a place name, and I think it's spelled Sigil. I think that's spelled said Sigil. Because that's how your man said it in the video. I know that's what I'm going off. It's fine. Say it whatever you want. It's your word. But yeah, it's. I believe she's called the Mistress of Pain.
Yes.
She is the ruler of the city of Sigil, and yeah, basically, if you how long are we in? Yeah, if you fuck around in Sigil, yeah, if you fuck around in Sigil, she's gonna come for you, and it's not going to be pleasant, as you can imagine, because her name is the Mistress of Pain.
Am I right in saying? And again, it's been a long time since I looked up the lore on this. Am I right in saying that she basically is like a warden, and
Yeah.
people like anyone can go through sigil. There's no like it's not keeping demons or celestials or anyone out. Anyone can pass through here to get to another plane. There's no problems there. But like if you started a fight, for example, there,
Yeah,
her only job is to be like, I'm gonna make the two of you now suffer
yeah,
for ever deigning to cause trouble in this city.
I'm gonna
you know?
make an example out of you.
Yeah,
Yeah, and she has this like really crazy, intimidating, like golden mask headpiece with all these spikes coming off it, like almost like a sun. It's really she's intimidating looking and like looks to match her title. But yeah, she's basically like the like guardian, for lack of a better word, or yeah, warden actually is probably the best word for it. She's like the warden of Sigil and is there to yeah, just make sure nobody's messing around. So fuck around and find out in Sigil, and you'll find out the Mistress of Pain is going to ruin your day.
kind of reminds me a little bit of the guy who controls the Bifrost in
Oh, Heimdall.
Heimdall. A little bit like Heimdall, kind of like a gatekeeper almost.
Yeah,
Heimdall also dresses in gold.
he does. He does. Heimdall can see all.
He can see all. There's I can't remember if I told you this. I definitely told this to Tara. I was looking. I can't remember. A few weeks ago, I was looking up some stuff about the Bifrost. The etymology of that word. I think people, because in my head, and maybe you knew different or knew better. In my head, the etymology of that word was that it was like bi, and then frost. But it's not. The etymology of the word is bife and then rost. Those are two separate words. It's not bi space frost. I would have always spelled it as one word, but what I mean is I thought that it was bi
Yeah.
frost. It's bife rost, which is something I never knew. There's a little interesting factoid for you there. Yeah.
Just punch my microphone. Yeah. But as I was saying.
But yeah, so that's Sigil. Very cool setting. I think you like it. Always kind of reminds me. I when I picture it, I picture like a golden space station, like a starport where people are just coming and going, and you see literally on the same place where you see people like queuing to get to the material plane or the Shadowfell or something like that. And it's like an airport almost. And basically you'll have people who are like paladins, Asimar paladins are queuing up to go to the Shadowfell, but so is a pit fiend behind them. And he's like, oh, I have my ticket here.
Yeah, they're like, keep 2 meters between each other. We do not want you messing with each other's plane or business.
Yes,
you can do that when you leave here. Oh god.
There's also another way of getting around the planes as well I was going to bring up. And this is actually what the intro is about. So there's another plane called the Astral Sea.
Yes.
In my mind, it's basically space. It's the space between worlds. You'll find a lot of things like Gith and Githyanki, or Githyanki and Githzerai there, as well as like astral dreadnoughts and stuff like that. But basically scattered throughout the entirety of the Astral Sea, there are these things called the color pools, which are shimmering portals that just lead into different planes. And they can come in a variety of different colors. And you can kind of just fall through them, or you can intentionally go through them. But you can navigate the planes. Have you ever seen? You have seen Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes. Oh yeah.
You know
yeah,
when they go through all the different jump points, but they're bouncing between them. That's kind of like what the color planes are in my head. And they come out in a bunch of different colors and stuff like that, which all correspond to different planes. So, like I said a while ago, there is the magenta for the pandemonium, amethyst for the abyss, and shining white for the positive energy plane. There's also silver for the prime material, dark blue for the plane of water, and ruby red, of course, for the nine hells. Um, so I thought that was very cool. It's a very cool part of the. That's an old part of the D&D cosmology as well. And I think a lot of that does span to most of the settings, um, where kind of it does, because D&D is around so long. If you look up the cosmology, it's just like there's no real. Some they each have their own cosmology or a version of the same one, but they're all also technically in the same grander universe because you can cross from Earth into Eberron, into Faerun, into Dragonlance or Greyhawk, and if you look at how far back and convoluted the lore goes, it actually supports the idea that you could totally, send your players and have them drop into the middle of New York City and meet, I don't know, fucking Spider-Man or something. Why not?
Don't tempt me, Connor.
But that would totally be within the realm of what is possible in the D&D multiverse.
And you take 3d12 slashing damage from a small Canadian hairy man.
3d10. That would be a lot though, yeah, because it's. Oh, and look, he also has adamantine weapons as well, so they overcome the resistance.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that'd be interesting if Wolverine got dropped in. You can make a Wolverine build. I've thought about this. You can make a Wolverine build if you do a barbarian path of the
Beast Claw.
Beast.
Yeah.
And take the claws. Yeah, you can absolutely do a Wolverine setup. And he even gets a leap ability at level 6 or 7, I want to say.
Oh god, have you ever seen, just to go out entirely off tangent, but just about how awesome they did like an X-Men anime. I think it's actually on Netflix now. But there's a bit in it where they're fighting, I think it's Omega Red, the Russian supervillain with all the metal tentacle arm, the metal tentacles that come out of his arm.
1 second, I'm gonna get up with images. I'm sure I'll know him.
But like he's fighting. No, yeah, it's him. Yeah, he's fighting Wolverine and Beast, and he's just like beating the crap out of them. And then like he's got like, I think he's got like these wires in them that like shock them and like immobilize them with pain. And like Wolverine just like turns to the Beast and he's like, the next time he hits us with that, when you can move again, I want you to hit me and you're not going to stop. And he's like, what? And he's like, I said hit me. And then like the fucking like the whatever the thing goes off and Wolverine's like screaming and he's like, do it now, Hank. And he just starts hitting him. He hits him once and it doesn't work. And he's like, I said keep hitting me. And he's like, you just see Beast just like wail on him for like 8 or 9 punches. And then he just gets rocketed across the room and Wolverine stands up in berserker mode and just goes off. Oh my god, it's the best.
I didn't really. I never realized Wolverine had a berserker mode.
It's just basically he just goes full feral and can't like distinguish between like friend and foe, and just like at that thing he beats Omega Red, but he just keeps stabbing the crap out of his corpse until like Beast comes over to try and help him, and then like he spins on him with the claws. It's like I love Wolverine.
Have you thought much about the design or the layout of the cosmology in your world, or do you use the kind of the standard Faerun setup? Because I know a lot of people do. Like Matt Mercer even has the way his planes are laid out is exactly the same as Faerun, as far as I'm aware. Maybe with some minor differences. But do you do the same in your world?
So I it wasn't something I gave a whole bunch of thought when I was building my world, to be honest, because I was just trying to get like towns and villages right.
It's really grand scale stuff that if you're just running a 4-person party with some goblins in a cave, you do not need to think about
Oh yeah, absolutely. But no, I think like I've not like intentionally done it, but I guess I kind of did. I do basically just follow the Faerun structure where like there's the material plane and then like the Shadowfell and Feywild are the two most near ones, and they kind of overlap the material plane to some extent, and then you've got the inner and outer planes and like the astral sea and all that kind of stuff. So I stick fairly closely to that for that one. I might do it a little differently next time, because I do really like that like solar system idea that you have, or like I kind of, for some reason I kind of want to do mine as a web. I don't know why. it makes no sense.
Ooh. That could be cool if like Like that could be cool if you, I don't know. Okay, I'm literally thinking of this as I'm saying it. If you did like some sort of god being that was like a cosmic spider
Like that wove creation.
that literally wove creation and then also
Yeah.
spun a web and maybe as a result, if you want to get to the nine hells, you can't just go straight there. You've got to go from there to the plane of fire to the plane of Acheron and then to the like maybe they don't all connect to each other, so you have to
Mm.
like navigate it a very specific way. That could be super cool.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, cosmic spiders. Martin's own version of the Spider Verse.
Oh God, the traitor! Ah, the traitor for.
I saw.
Oh, okay, we won't get in a tangent about that because that was really awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, go on. I'll stop interrupting you with Marvel stuff now,
No, you're okay. I'll stop interrupting you with Twilight stuff.
please.
Don't know why. I don't know why I keep doing it. It's so relevant. Um, yeah. So there. That's. I mean, I think the Faerun one is pretty solid, and I mean, like again, it's such broad strokes. When it comes to like, if you're a dungeon master and you're thinking about creating your own cosmology, and if you have a good idea, by all means, run with it. But also, there's apps. I mean, like again, to kind of put it in context, I think if Matt Mercer, one of the most famous DMs in the world, who has a very successful show and a couple of books, and
Basically,
you
the
know
gold
whatever else,
standard.
his own company built around his D&D game, if he uses a very slight variation of the standard Faerun cosmology, and can do all that, there's really no need to recreate the wheel, literally. But I mean, it's also if you have a good idea, it's fun. I think. Like I said, mine is not dissimilar from the wheel, the solar system idea. I think it's I mean, mine is basically like there is the sun, there's the material planes. I have this idea where like each of the elemental planes, they kind of orbit and at different times of the year they will pass near the prime material plane, and that's how the different seasons come about.
That's really
Is
cool.
like if the plane of fire passes by, it's hotter at that time of year, so things get hotter.
Yeah.
And likewise with the plane of water, things get cooler from like the ice plane and stuff like that. So that kind of infers that. I also had this other one, which is kind of my version of Acheron, which is the plane like Infinite War, and it's basically like it's a world or a plane that exists exactly halfway between the center of the solar system and the outer part of it. And it's where like celestials and demons. It's basically the front line of the war between celestials and fiends. Um, yeah, and they're trying to like breach the world and get into the inner planes and stuff like that. But the celestials have been holding the line for thousands of years now. Um, and yeah, I have a few, and I also like I've instead of like the nine hells being like a layered, tiered thing, like a cake, like a really, really demonic cake. Um, I have a thing where like there
Do
is
you know
the
what kind of cake
central.
it'll be?
I want to say red velvet, but that's wrong. Go.
Devil's food.
Devil's food. Thank you very much. Uh,
That's a cake, isn't it? I think it's fake. Ah, fuck it. It doesn't matter.
we're gonna find
Okay,
out.
do some googling. Go on.
I'm gonna lose my train of thought now. As well.
You were talking about the demonic cake.
Devil's food is a cake.
Oh, thank God I'm not psychotic.
Nigella Lawson does one. Um,
Jesus. She's like 60, do you know
she's a good-looking 60.
that? All right, Connor, calm down. Clip and show to Tara.
That's fine. She keeps talking about Henry Cavill.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
He was actually on Graham Norton there, and Graham was kind of semi making fun of him for collecting and painting Warhammer figurines, and I'm like, you leave him alone. He's Superman. um,
He's Geralt.
he's Geralt. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, the better of the two. I think definitively.
Superman's
But
pretty
yeah,
awesome.
what?
It's grand. I said Superman's pretty awesome.
No, Superman is awesome, and I like his portrayal of it. We've been through it.
Yeah.
Not a fan of the movies, but I do still like him as the character. I think he did a good job. So in talking about different cosmologies and how they can be laid out, one of the other ones, and this is the one that really gets me, and I think it's so interesting, is the cosmology of Eberron.
Okay.
If you look at like third edition Eberron, which I believe is when Eberron first came around, the cosmology almost looks like an atom with like different electrons at the different planes, and similar to my world, where like when certain planes pass near the material takes on aspects of it. They would like they wouldn't like be a central thing like that with an even orbit. They would kind of loop in and around it and far out, then back in again and far out. And when they came close, like the prime material would take on aspects of these different planes. It looked like a weird atom. Um, but the creation myth of Eberron is actually something that's very, very interesting. Because Eberron has its dragon marks and its noble houses and stuff like that. And Eberron, the creation myth that goes along with it, feeds into its cosmology entirely. I'm just going to read this part for you here. It's really interesting. So the fourth edition cosmology of Eberron, when the progenitor dragons, Cyberus, Kyber, and Kyber fought each other, their combat stretched out across existence. Kyber defeated Cyberus, rending and scattering him across the stars. Eberron then, Eberron, who is the third dragon, progenitor dragon, encased her evil sister within herself, transforming herself into the physical world with Kyber imprisoned within. Scholars believe that this extends to the cosmology as well, where some planes exist within Sybaris, which Sybaris is basically the astral sea. The remains make up the astral sea, also called the Sea of Sybaris. Some with Kyber, so Sybaris is the dragon above, so like the astral sea and everything like that, in the far outer planes, kind of like that. You have Kyber, the dragon below, is elemental chaos, and then you have Eberron, the dragon between. And each of them basically became multiple worlds within the cosmology, with literally it's Kyber, the kind of evil progenitor dragon in the center, Eberron, the dragon encased around Kyber, and then creating the world of Eberron, and then what remains orbiting around it in space basically is what was it? Kyber and Mr. Name? Sybaris, Kyber, and Sybaris. And I think it's really cool. And then you have like the dragon above makes up the like outer planes. So what's left of Sybaris is basically the Nine Hells, the Realm of Perfect Order, the Endless Night, the Azure Sky, Realm of Madness, all these kind of outer stuff like that. Eberron is made up of the world Eberron itself, the region of dreams, the Shadowfell, and the Feywild. And then Kyber below is the Sea of Fire, the churning chaos, and the plane of ice. And I just think it's a really, really interesting way that like these three progenitor dragons, these three creation dragons, fought and killed some of each other, like encased some of each other, and then founded the universe as an extent. It's a really unique take.
It actually reminds me. Yeah, it's a really unique take. It's really cool. It actually reminds me of the First World from Fizbands.
I've not actually read enough of that from Fizbands to be.
I will.
If you're more familiar, feel free to jump in.
I haven't read a ton of the First World because when it came to Fizbands, I immediately ran to magic items and classes. But the First
How about
World,
the monster snap blocks?
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah. But the First World was basically like the primeval world that was created first. Oh yeah, so the elegy, there's an elegy for the First World, and it's an ancient draconic poem of unknown origin, found with minor variations in the collections and traditions of dragons across many worlds of the material. Various creation myths told on different worlds echoed some of the themes and notions of this poem. The elegy suggests that before the myriad worlds of the material plane came into being, before Oerth and Toril and Eberron and Kryn existed, the primordial dragons, Bahamut and Tiamat, worked together to create the material plane in the form of a single First World. All the worlds that now constitute the plane are, in the words of the poem, seeding realities formed when the First World was sundered in some unexplained catastrophe. The story told in elegy for the First World suggests a number of truths regarding the nature of dragons. First, then it's just getting into dragons and stuff there, and just how they're like they echo across the planes because they're like prime forces of elemental power from the material plane.
What was you'll know this better than I will now because you were reading. That kind of reminds me of the Wheel of Time thing, where there are certain people who are focal points in reality, and they're and like, am I right in saying that they don't have as much free will as other people because they are locked into a destiny that matters in the grander scale?
Yeah. So I was actually going to talk about the Wheel of Time cosmology because it is very interesting and similar to, so like it's a giant spinning wheel. Basically, is what the Wheel of Time is, and they all say like the wheel. I think say like oh god, too many W's in that sentence. I'm just going to abandon it. The wheel wills as it does, I think is what they said. But so there are certain people where if you are, basically like fated or destined, you can be Taverin, which means that like the wheel basically forms the pattern around you, and you inherently pull the threads together to create a web within
Right.
the pattern of the wheel and change how the pattern is spun. Like it'll all like it's very very interesting, and like without getting into spoilery territory, if you find out kind of pretty early on in the first book that some of the main characters, a couple of them are Tavren, and
Yep.
like it really impacts people. Like stuff does just warp around them together, like otherwise it otherwise wouldn't. Like there's literally a bit in I'm reading the second book now, The Great Hunt. I think I'm about 200-300 pages after finishing it. But there is a bit in it where one of the main characters, Rand, he goes to an area and like no sorry it's not him but another character goes to an area that who knows Rand and meets someone who met Rand previously, and they're all talking about him, and then the brother of that character comes in and is like, everyone's talking about Randall Thor. He's like, I met this farmer on the road who said that Rand convinced him life outside his farm was worth exploring. And like all these, like person after person who like just on a chance meeting with them has had their fate entirely changed because, spoiler, Rand is Havren, and he like, and like just the wheel like weaving itself around his destiny and like pulls other people into it and changes their destiny. It's really cool.
I think when it comes to like cosmology,
and it always repeats. It always repeats. Like it just repeats and repeats and repeats until the destiny is fulfilled. The dragon is reborn to either break the world or save it and fight the Dark One, and then literally just goes boom all over again.
It's the idea of a spinning wheel or something like that, or anything at all really that I don't know, that creates, or that like whether it's weaving or
The
carving or shaping in some way,
the fates in Greek mythology with the threads.
Exactly, yeah. I think anything like that is a great basis for jumping off on it with a creation myth. We're not specifically talking about creation myths here today, but I mean, I feel like they can go hand in hand.
Oh yeah,
with
they kind of do, because your creation myth kind of explains why your cosmology is the way it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. It's I'm kind of realizing I have a creation myth, but I don't really, it doesn't inform my cosmology. My worlds kind of existed prior to that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's better, or not better, but okay in a different way. Like maybe it's okay to not answer all the questions from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
But I also think it can be good to be like, in the beginning there was
Yeah, hilarious. Both on the opposite of each other, and that like I have a creation myth, but no rock solid cosmology of my own, other than it's the Faerun one, and you've done a really like complex cosmology, but don't really have a creation myth.
Yeah, I mean, I know how the prime material got created in my world, which is basically the Celestials' home world was destroyed by there was a schism in the Fiends.
I love
which
that
was
word, by the way, schism.
Thank you. There was a schism between the Fiends where they, for all of eternity up until this point, the Fiends and the Celestials had fought each other, and I don't have a name for him, but he's kind of like my Asmodeus. He of course wants to keep killing them. He's like, we want to do evil. We're going to keep trying to do evil. They're going to keep trying to do good. And I'm like, I'm going to keep killing them. I'm never going to wipe them out, because without good, we are nothing. There needs to he is evil, but he understands there needs to be a balance in the universe. And then all the other demons and devils can't fathom this. Like, we could just go there and kill them all. Why can't we just go kill them all? And then he's like, no, shut the fuck up. Listen to me. I'm the boss here. And basically all the demons then rebel, and they join up and they kill him. And then they all piss off and they go attack the celestial homeworld and destroy it. So then all the remaining devils who wanted to follow orders and stuff like that are like, oh, I guess we have this place now, and this becomes the Hells. And each of both you have these 7 arch devils, and they're all like, cool, I'll lead the way. Now, I think I'll lead the way. No, I'll lead the and basically they all keep fighting each other now because no one can decide who will supplant the previous overarching archdevil. And all the demons then took over the celestial world, so celestials had no home. So they went to the inner planes where the elemental planes and stuff were, and they talked to all the prime elemental gods, each one controlling their own domain. Mm-hmm. And they were like, look, we don't have a world. Can you build us one? You have the building blocks to make us a world. Can you do that? And in exchange, we'll grant you the magic that basically allows you to create life. And they were like, "Oh, that's a pretty good deal. Yeah, sure, we'll build you a planet, no problem." So they did that. They gave them the idea of how to create life. And then all the elementals were like, "This is great. Let's go make a world and put some life in it." And then they did that, and it was fucking mental because they put a drop of life into a world that contained fire, earth, water, and air, and immediately everything went to shit because it was life, but it was so chaotic and stuff. They couldn't tame it. And then they got the giants to come in, and they were like, "Hey, your guys are big and you're strong. You should probably like try to tame this world for us." So they literally tamed the oceans and carved the mountains and brought the material plane into a state of somewhat peace. Sorry, I went off a bit of a ramble there. That's kind of my creation myth on a kind of broad strokes of it. I forget why I was talking about this.
We were talking about cosmology.
Yes. So yeah, but basically, so like the Celestials kind of form the gods of my world, and the evil gods of my world are the devils and demons and stuff like that. But none of them made the worlds. They and even the primordial gods, the Earth god and the Fire god and stuff, they built the world. But the idea of building planets that surround a sun and stuff, none of them came up with that idea. This, as far as they're concerned, that's just how time began. So again, maybe that's okay, but maybe I should have a single soul creator that no one really worships anymore because he died off millions of years ago, but he built the first sun and built all the original planets or something. That could be interesting.
The creator of my world is the BBEG.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You were saying that before because did he father all of the other gods and they kind of rebelled against him because he was obviously evil.
Yeah, he started similar. Like he fathered all. He made all them, and then they made a world, and then he was like, "I didn't make that." Smash, 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 and they were like, "You broke our tie," and rebelled.
Yeah.
And then they had a war and made a new world.
Oh, so is your world? Did he actually succeed in destroying the original world?
He smashed it to pieces. Like he ruined
Oh,
it.
okay.
He went down and just ruined everything they made. So they all just went, okay, no, he's just destroying every attempt we're having at making life. So yeah, they made the first weapons and went after him, and cut him to pieces, and scattered him across the aeons, and imprisoned his spiritual essence. And yeah, and then they like basically tried to heal. They made a new world, which is why my world is called Near Quebec, which is I believe Nordic, because it's been so long since I actually looked into it. But I believe it's Nordic for first light.
Okay. Yeah, and you have like a fifth god who's like the goddess of light as well, isn't it?
Yes, she was the most powerful and was the one who had the most of the original creator's divine essence put into her, because she was supposed to be his companion.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, because he created her first, and then they fathered the children, and then the five of them kind of turned against him. Is that right?
The four elements first, then light, basically.
Oh, then light last.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I always like that. I like that idea. I like the idea actually that the biggest god, the oldest god, is actually the bad one in your world, as opposed to, I feel like in a lot of ones, it's like someone's disgruntled son or daughter goes off and becomes evil because they don't like how things are run or something like that.
He's the god of darkness. He's the god of darkness, the void, and nothingness.
Pretty cool. I have a couple of things here I wanted to go through. Like I said, we're not going to cover all the planes in this. I'm going to do a quick run through the elemental planes, because these are ones I really enjoy. I think they can because they can make for really interesting environments to explore.
Yes.
The elemental plane of Earth, right? Basically infinite caverns, caves, shifting tectonic plates, stuff like that. Crystal caverns, and it's the home of Tao, which are evil slaver genies, who are like greedy and seek gems and all that kind of stuff. Pretty cool plane. Also home of Earth's Ganassi and stuff, I believe. I actually don't know what the original origins of, or Ganassi, whatever you want to call them, is. In my world, they actually come from the elemental plane of whatever, and they settled on the material plane. I don't know, is it a case that's a case in regular D&D, or if it's a case that they are people who are like touched by elemental energy in the same way that a tiefling is by demonic energy?
Yeah. I'm not
I did
sure.
not. I actually did not do my research on them before jumping into it.
I'm honestly not too sure. I just, like I said, mostly what you had said about the element plane. I believe there's like an abundance of like precious stones and metals there as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. That could make for a super interesting arc if maybe like there was a mine on the material plane that actually they didn't go into a cave, they went into a portal and they harvested from the other side of the world. I've actually often thought if you do a plane hopping thing, you could totally do it like a Stargate series where you're jumping from world to world through portals. You know, it'd be really
Yeah,
really
yeah,
cool.
that'd be sick.
The next one is the elemental plane of fire. It's a home of the Efreet, who are also evil slaver genies.
I see a
Have a
pattern
trend going.
emerging.
Yeah, exactly. They live in the city of Brass, which is a very, very cool setup. There's also the Azure, which are like fire dwarves,
Yeah, they're
that
really
live on this
cool.
plane as well.
I,
Really,
li-
really
I like
cool.
them. I like their design a lot. Where they literally just look like dwarf Ghost Rider. Like,
Basically, yeah, yeah, big flaming beards and stuff. I think you would totally play an Azure as a character if you just took a dwarf stat block, maybe took something else out and gave them fire resistance instead. You could totally play an Azure as a player character.
yeah,
Um, Plane of Fire though, these two planes very inhospitable. Because the Earth one, if you read up on the information about it, it's like, oh, any person who is not able to basically dig or tunnel or glide through stone will likely be crushed by falling rock or shifting earthquakes or plates because it's just an infinite plane of earth and caverns. Um, and then they obviously the element plane of fire. It has like a sulfurous atmosphere, and it's. I was reading a description a while ago that was describing that it's occasionally you might find an area of respite that is not as hot, but is still hotter than the hottest deserts in the material plane. And I'm like, yeah, so it's just terrible. It's just terrible. Um, there's the elemental plane of air, which is literally just blue, cloudy skies for all in all directions for all time, basically. There are some floating structures, I believe, where things like Aarakocra and genies, the air genies, make their homes. This is actually one of the more I think this is the most hospitable of the elemental planes. Like that, honestly, that could make for some really cool.
yeah.
I haven't really thought much about the airplane, but I can imagine like with big floating castles and stuff, you could have like, oh, what was that show? There was like an animated show where like people lived in floating cities and they flew planes around and stuff like that. And I think it was like a Sky World thing. I don't know. I'd have to look this up.
Doesn't start ringing a bell. Sorry.
I don't think it ran for very long. I only saw a couple episodes, but it was a cool premise.
Yeah, or like the just like the air temples from Avatar.
Yeah, the air temples as well, yeah, but on floating chunks of rock instead of on mountaintops. And then you have the elemental plane of water, of course, home to the Merid. These guys they're not evil, but they're also not necessarily good. They're a bit neutral. It's basically an infinite ocean with no surface.
Yeah.
Apparently the pressure is equalized no matter where you are, so you can swim down or up, and the pressure won't get any higher or lower on the plane. Something I didn't know, and this is very cool. The salt content of the ocean gets higher or lower depending on where in the plane you are and how close you are to the positive or negative energy planes.
Tell me there's more salt in the water near the negative energy plane. Tell me.
There is.
Yes!
There is.
I love it. Even the ocean gets salty when it loses.
Exactly. So yeah, if you swim towards the positive plane, the water gets fresher, and if you swim towards the negative plane, it gets more briny and salty. One region near the negative energy plane, you'll love this, which I didn't realize. There's a place called the Murky Depths, which is near the negative energy plane.
It's where the League of Legends players live.
It's where a particular god named Blipdul Ploop lives.
That's literally what it is. Bloop, bloop, bloop.
It's a Blipdul Ploop. And that's where he is the god of the Kotor, the silly looking fish people. And that's where he lives. He lives in a very salty part of the water plane near the negative energy plane. So remember early on I said there was a lot more planes than I realized.
Yeah.
So I knew those 4 prime elemental planes, and I'm a big fan, long time fan. There are also and I would not have known to call them this, but I would have known they existed. These are the para-elemental planes.
Okay.
And they are located in between these other planes. And like, because the
Right.
cosmology of the wheel is like a ring that surrounds the prime material.
Mm.
So where the air and fire meet is the plane of smoke,
Ooh.
just an infinite plane of choking smoke. Where the earth and fire meet is a plane of magma. And I think the fields of creation are here as well. Magma.
Magma.
Where water and earth meet are the plains of ooze, like just infinite swamps
I'm
of mud.
guessing that's where Zogtamoy is. No, he's in the Hells, isn't he? Sorry, yeah.
So Tomoy has his own realm in the
Yeah.
Hells, I believe, yeah. And then where air and water meet are the freezing plains of ice. Um, so I wouldn't have known they were called para-elemental planes, but I did know they existed. Also pretty cool. I love the idea of like particularly a plane of ice, like the ice planet of Hoth almost,
Yeah.
or an infinite swamp. Oh, like Dagobah. Man, loads of Star Wars references today. Um,
Oh, actually, I'd imagine the elemental plane of ice might look a little like the Fortress of Solitude.
yeah, probably would be like if anyone was to live there. I don't know who would live there necessarily. Ice devils maybe. But if anyone was to live there, they'd probably have huge spiky ice fortresses like that. Yeah. Um, Here's another one for you. Quasi-elemental planes.
Okay.
All right, so these are elemental planes that, like I mentioned with the elemental plane of water, they get a little bit closer
Right.
to the positive and negative elemental planes. And these are cool. These are interesting, all right? So first off are all the positive ones. So when the elemental plane of air is near or where it borders the positive plane is the plane of lightning.
Ooh.
Where the fire plane borders the positive one is the plane of radiance, just
Cool.
pure sheer blinding light. Where the earth one is borders it is the plane of minerals, so it's the richest
Just
veins of
full
earth
of
plane.
bottles of Coke and fucking and
Yeah, and 7-Up and Fanta.
Very
Where
Irish
the
reference.
where the water one is the plane of steam, just fog and mist and steam everywhere.
And video game discounts.
Yes, exactly. Sadly, not anymore. It used to be so much. I used to have the Steam app on my phone, man, and during the Steam sale that were going for like a week, I'd be in work refreshing it, going, "I want to buy that? It's £3. Yeah, I'll buy it. Why not?" And I still haven't played half of them. Then you have all the ones that border the negative energy plane. So where air meets the negative energy plane is the plane of vacuum.
Because it really sucks.
Because wow. Where fire meets the negative energy plane is the plane of ash.
Okay.
So like diminished
Cool.
fire. Where earth meets it is the plane of dust. And where water meets it is, and you'll love this, the plane of salt. So eventually you get so salty that it's just salt.
Now that's where the League players live.
Yeah. But yeah, that's I knew about I didn't know they were called para elemental planes, but I knew those ones existed. I also thought they were very, very interesting. I never knew the quasi elemental planes existed. A plane of lightning sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like I said, we could go through a lot more. We haven't even touched on some of the other planes that we really like. I talked about Acheron there a while ago. That's one of them. It's obviously the Nine Hells. There's the Abyss, where all the demons live.
There's the ones that are very clearly just inspired by like other mythologies, where you've got like Mount Celestia, which is very obviously Mount Olympus, and you've got Isgard, which is Asgard, which isn't even trying wizards. That isn't
No,
even
it's not.
trying.
It's yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Oh my god! No, that's way before. Okay, hang on. Sorry, I have to. I'm gonna after the podcast. I'm gonna have to look up when the Horn of Valhalla came into D&D and when the Wheel of Time started. Because
the Wheel of Time was since the. Oh, well, I suppose I know what you mean. Sorry, the Horn of Valhalla could be from older editions.
Yeah. No, I'm just like, there's a very. I just realize there's a very similar magical item in that called the Horn of Valir.
Oh wow. There's yeah, I think so the planes, Martin, obviously literally expansive as all hell. They go on forever, and then they intersect at some point, and then they connect and break off, and you can travel between realms and universes. And I think the planes basically give you kind of a near limitless amount of places to go, or quests that you can design for your campaign. I've always I kind of I don't know if I'd ever do a plane hopping campaign myself, just because as much as cool as all these worlds are, there's so much you could do with them. I do think that there is a how'd you put it? There's kind of a thing where like if you go from one fantastical world to another to another to another, eventually I think does the what's the word? Help me out here.
It's like eating cake for every meal. It's not
Novelty.
special anymore.
The novelty of it. Yeah, does the novelty wear off? Whereas like the way I typically play it with our game is you guys will go on excursions to these other realms occasionally. Whether you're traveling through a portal created by an archfey, or a portal created by a genie, or you're being pulled through a mirror, which is a portal, into a level of the abyss. Yeah, I think it's better because then you have that sense of I shouldn't be here, and I kind of need to get home. Even if you know you're like, even if you go to one of the other planes because you're like, I'm going to go to this plane, I'm going to find this item, and then I'm going to come home. You still have that idea of I need to get home at the end of this, and I think that infers a sense of urgency because so few of these places are actually livable. Even the places that are good are almost too good to the point where most D&D characters couldn't realistically live in these places very long term. Like I said at the start with the positive energy plane, if you go there, you can only survive minutes before you basically burn out your life force, and you just diminish, or you not diminish, but you kind of just become part of the plane. Yeah, I have a lot of ideas for stuff I could do in upcoming campaigns with various planes and stuff like that. Maybe even some like really weird otherworldly stuff like space fights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It gets a little bit sci-fi when you start. I often think about them like planets, so it gets very sci-fi, like we talked about last week in our podcast,
Yeah.
sci-fi and D&D. Yeah. Do you have any closing remarks on the planes? How maybe you use them in your game? How you have used them in your game?
Yeah, I think like it's natural to feel intimidated trying to fully represent an entire plane of existence for your players when you're DMing. The way I got around it was I just took elements. I had a whole area they were journeying through that was influenced by various because basically its tether to the planes was damaged. To the material plane was damaged in that area, so there was it was basically a giant desert with a fortress in the middle, and as they went through it, it would change what realm it was influenced in. First earth, then fire, then a plane of the abyss called Maladomini, and then eventually they got to the boss fight in the middle. And like I just took elements from each then, and then like I said at the beat where, okay, so it'll take about 3 days. It'll take potentially up to 3 days to cross each section. Unless they like roll really well on like survival or something, and it speeds up their journey. So over these times, I'll have opportunities to show the influence of each of these planes as they travel and stuff like that. So like for the earth plane, I had these like giant spires that were coming up out like a hand coming up out of the ground with like rings of like precious stones and metal in them that my players actually climbed to get some. They picked up mithril. They picked up a small amount of mithril and adamantine that way. And I just did stuff out. Like it's definitely a bit intimidating to try and just be like, welcome to the plane of fire. It's all fire all the time. Have fun.
Yeah.
It's a little challenging, absolutely, and intimidating to try and represent that all in one go. But I think if you do it so that you just take elements, unless you really, really want to do the big scale thing, I think a good way to do it is to just take elements and almost like what you said, like small excursions almost to the planes, and just kind of like you get to experience it, and then you come back to reality, and that contrast is what makes that special.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because I mean, look, I mean, if you consider it in the same way that you do your own material plane, each of these planes is probably as rich and diverse as in reality, it's probably as rich and diverse as any homebrew campaign setting where you have multiple countries and kingdoms and races and people and cultures and everything, and they're all interacting with each other. Just because you bring your people, you're through a portal into the plane of fire, and in this particular section of the plane of fire, there is these, I don't know, monks or warriors, and maybe they're very honorable but very aggressive, and that's one way of doing it. But maybe next time you go through, you're in a totally different place on that plane because it's a whole world. You can do little things. I think handling bite-sized chunks is is probably the best way to do it. And also not to take it too literally as well. Like the plane of air is like an infinite sky, but there are floating stone castles and stuff like that. It might rain there occasionally, as well. It doesn't have to just be that thing. Well, I know I said the plane of water is like an infinite ocean. I've always thought that there probably is a bottom to that. Um, in my head, the way it works in my world is like it's more like the outer part is the plane of ice. Like the top is just an entirely encased sphere of ice. And then the further down you get towards the core, the warmer the waters are, and they're more freezing towards the outer part. Um, but I think that's kind of okay. I think like most the way the planes are, even if you look at the DMG and stuff, or even if you do relatively extensive research, there's not a lot of really hard baked stuff. The Plane of Fire has like the city of brass and stuff like that. Um, there's probably other cities there as well, though. There's probably a lot of other stuff, and I think a lot of it's open to interpretation, which is great because you can then make it fit with your world and your pantheon of gods or your creation myth, and you can tweak it. Like I said, a lot of people use the Faerun one, the Great Wheel, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you decide I don't really like this world or that world, either change them or just pull them out entirely. And the thing is, much like my current setup, I mean, I have some worlds planned out in my cosmology. I absolutely do not have it finished. But you guys have only gone to like 4 other worlds technically. You've been to Libidia, which is a very sexy part of hell. You've been to the Plane of Water, the Shadowfell, and the Feywild. And that's over 12 levels.
Yeah.
You guys have done that. So I mean, you don't need to
a
basically
new world every 3 levels.
yeah, give or take. Yeah. But yeah, you guys don't have to basically write your whole creation myth and everything from the ground up. It's a thing I think we harp back to every now and again, or pretty much all the time with this podcast is you only need what you need. You only need what's immediately around you, and maybe a little bit for what's around that, but you do not need much more when you're just playing the game. A lot of this stuff is really great. It can be really inspirational, giving great ideas for quests, particularly if all of a sudden a portal to the elemental plane of Earth opens up, and or the elemental plane of fire, and suddenly fire elementals are burning down houses left, right, and center. That's a great plot hook. Let's go there. Let's bring a few buckets of water and get that sorted out. But like, actually, do you want to say the entire game, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, is that it's the plane of Oblivion has breached all these rifts into the world, and what's it, Meru's Dagon, I think is the.
I've never played Oblivion.
Oh, you're missing out. But that's basically that all these rifts are being torn open and demons are coming through, and it's the beginnings of a large-scale invasion by a demonic army, and your whole quest in the game is to stop that.
There's a very similar plot line in Marvel where the devil in Marvel, Mephisto, he basically gathers an interdimensional army of himself, and they're all
so the multiverse versions of him.
And they're all coming through into the main multiverse one after another. It's actually very like what was said about Kang the Conqueror at the end of Loki as well.
I wonder, is that what okay, this is not at all related to D&D, but this just came to mind because if you watch the Spider-Man trailers for the upcoming movie, there's a bit where like,
oh yeah, they're all coming in. I can't stop them. Like, to me, in my mind, Doctor Strange should absolutely be able to stop another Green Goblin or another Electro from coming in. There's absolutely but if there was multiple Mephistos trying to breach this universe, that would totally be something he would not be able to stop. I don't want to get on the Mephisto train again after watching WandaVision for so long. I've been so hardcore on the Mephisto train for WandaVision. I think we'll leave. I think we'll leave there. But I'm hype. I can't wait to watch that movie. Oh,
yeah. It's gonna be so good. But Martin.
Yes, Connor.
That's all the time we have for today.
Ooh, it's been fun out in space, going around the place.
Basically, we went on a bit of a space excursion this week to all the various planets and planes and stuff. I think traveling the planes and stuff in D&D, it's if ever you get tired of going to the village and climbing the mountain and killing the dragon, go to any one of these worlds, and they're so bizarre. And honestly, I feel like the way they're written in the DMG is like, here's a short paragraph kind of describing the basic layout of the world. whatever your mind is inspired to do based on that paragraph, run with it, you know. And I feel that's the best thing possible, because it's like, oh, this is a world of like Acheron. This is a world where people are constantly at war at all times, and you might go there and they're like, cool. Now it's like, it might be a little bit like Avernus, where there's multiple factions, and maybe you could do a whole arc where you're either joining up with this faction or fighting this faction or undermining this faction, you know, while they vie for control of this one province of Acheron, you know?
Yeah.
Could be super, super cool. Sorry. If you have any questions you'd like us to ask, bring up my notes. If you have any questions you'd like us to ask, stories you'd like us to share, or topics you would like us to cover, please tweet us at MicFlayersPod on Twitter. You can find our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Breaker, and Radio Republic. Barton, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at So Sorry It's Over. You can also find me on the Micflayers podcast, which Twitter account, which is at MicFlayersPod, and I almost said that wrong. Otherwise though, you can mainly find me here every Friday, 6 p.m. Irish time on the Micflayers podcast. Connor, where do people find you on the internet?
People can find me on Twitter at 0.Conor, ZeroPointConor, 1N, very important. And as always, as Martin said, every Friday, 6 p.m. Irish time here on the Micflayers podcast on the aforementioned platforms. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this inspired you to maybe write some otherworldly plot hooks for your D&D games. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Micflayers podcast. Until then, thank you very much for joining us. See you all next time.
Bye-bye.